Welcome to Commerce Connect, the official podcast of the City of Commerce, Texas. Here, we bring you the stories, updates, and conversations that matter most to our community.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Commerce Connect. We're wrapping up our three-part series on streets, and today we're talking specifically about street maintenance. In episode 1, we talked about some of the basic fundamentals of streets, how they're constructed in layers, what they're used and intended for, and then how we fund and pay for street activities. Episode 2, we talked about the specifics of street reconstruction and how much time it takes to do any individual project. And then today we're going to talk about street maintenance. And so what we'll do is talk about what are the types of maintenance, what are the tools that we use for that maintenance, and then specifically what is Commerce Street Maintenance Plan and what activities can you begin to see from us in the near future. So as we start, I think it's important to just refresh our memories that any given street has got 3 or 4 layers. Most of the time at the very bottom underground is the subgrade. Those are the natural native soils. They may have been treated and compacted a little bit, but that's the native soil to your area. Above that subgrade, there's going to be a base material. You're going to be hauling in some new type of soil, gravel, or base material, and you're going to put it in on top of the subgrade, and you're going to roll it and compact it because you don't want it to move. You want it to be as solid as possible. On top of the base, you're then going to put in your asphalt or cement surface or layer, and then on top of that will be a driving surface. So 4 layers: subgrade, base, then the road, and then the road surface. That's important because when you're talking about street maintenance, you're not touching the subgrade and you're not touching the base. You're only touching the surface or the road material itself. You're very rarely ever going beneath that for maintenance activities. And so the work that you do in terms of maintenance, that work is probably only going to last 5 years. You're not doing maintenance work that's going to last 15, 20, 30 years. So if you'll recall, we put up an image, maybe we can do it again. There is a PCI, or a pavement condition index graph. Over the life cycle of a street, for the first 5 to 8 years, the quality of that street and that street service is going to be pretty consistent, and then it's going to start to deteriorate. Between years 8, 10, and 15, that street surface is going to nosedive in terms of quality. And then 15 to 20, that road usually is just in complete failure if you haven't done any maintenance activities. What a maintenance program should do is you install a good quality street, it stays good for 5 to 8 years, and then you do some maintenance and you add another 5 years. Then you do some maintenance, then you add another 5 years. And then you do some maintenance and you add another 5 years. The goal, that street never drops off the cliff of that PCI curve. So dollars that you spend on maintenance in the first 8 years of that street life, it's cheaper to do, and it extends the life of that roadway, and it delays ever having to do reconstruction. Clearly in our community, when you look at the map that we can make available that shows the pavement condition index, or the PCI score for our entire network, most of our streets are in poor condition because there's been an absence or a lack of repeated and reliable maintenance activity to extend the life of that street. And so we recognize that we're in a bad condition in terms of street network. Most of our streets are in poor to failed condition, so we've got a lot of work ahead of us. But what are the types of maintenance that you can do? And what are the tools and the programs necessary to make that happen? The first maintenance program that should be in place is a cleaning and inspection program. Cities should be going and inspecting every street they have on a 2 to 3 year rotating basis. That means you should be intentionally looking at the surface, what is the quality, and updating the PCI score for that street segment. We started that program about 3 years ago, hiring a company to come in and do that assessment. They have some specialized equipment that they come in and they drive every street in our community, and then off of that data they assign a PCI score, and we'll bring them back every third or fourth year to re-drive, re-inspect, and update our condition index. So we've got to be inspecting our streets on a regular basis. That is a new activity that we've started about 3 years ago. We'll be updating probably in the next year or two. Once you've done some inspection, there's usually some cleaning or debris removal that is possible. You'll have areas of town that begin to have dirt, gravel, grass encroachment, and as that material starts getting onto the roadway, you should have a program to clean and remove that debris. Larger cities will have a fleet of street sweepers. That's a specialized piece of equipment. You've probably seen them. They drive in a box down the street, and at the bottom of that box is a rotating sweeper that takes that material, removes it. It's like a vacuum cleaner on wheels. Our community does not have a street sweeper or a fleet of street sweepers, but we're looking to acquire some small sweeping equipment so that we can go and quickly do spot cleaning and removal of gravel, dirt, anything that's going to begin to damage the surface level of that street as the public drives on it. So inspecting and cleaning, that's the first step in a street maintenance program. Once you've done the inspecting and you've kind of created an inventory of what are the conditions, then you've got to start rating what areas of town need maintenance and what type of maintenance is required. So the PCI score, again, is going to look at what is the condition of the surface, what is the condition of the road, what is the condition of the base and the subgrade. For those streets that have reached failed status, there's no point in doing maintenance activity. Any dollars that you spend, any material you use, any time you spend on doing maintenance on a street that has reached failed status from PCI is wasted. That material is not going to do any good. That street really needs to be reconstructed, and we talked about that process in the previous episode. But if you have streets that are in good to poor condition, there's maintenance activity that you can use to help sustain that street and keep that life going. So you want to prioritize based on that PCI score, what are the areas that are in good condition, fair condition, and poor condition. Good condition, there's a type of maintenance that you do. Fair condition, there's a type of maintenance. And poor condition, there's a type of maintenance where you're just working on the surface or on the road of that area. You're not doing base and subgrade. So we'll look at the PCI score. Again, we'll look at the traffic volume. Streets that have more traffic are usually higher priority in terms of maintenance activities, because the more traffic, the more wear on that street, the faster it will degrade. So you need to do maintenance on those high traffic areas so that you're preserving the life of that street. Then you'll evaluate the cost. What type of treatment is needed and what is the cost that it's going to be. I'm just going to say, I'm going to use $100,000 as an example. If we only have $100,000 this year that we can use on street maintenance, we may be able to do 5 miles of maintenance type A and only do 1 mile of maintenance type B. Well, do we want to get 5 miles of benefit, or do we want to get 1 mile of benefit with the $100,000 that we have? So you evaluate the PCI score, the traffic volume, and what's the cost of the maintenance activity that's needed, and what is the best use of those community resources. Let's talk specifically about the types of street maintenance that you do. Again, good streets, you're usually going to come do some kind of microsurface or slurry treatment. What that means is subgrade's in good shape, base is in good shape, the road material is in good shape, but the surface has begun to wear. So on the road itself, you'll have 3 to 4 inches of asphalt or concrete, and then on the top, you'll have the surface that's intended for your tire to contact the street. If that begins to wear, then it creates some safety issues for tire traction. So you can come in and do a micro seal, or you can put in a fine layer of new oil and aggregate to just put a rough surface on that street again to improve the traction, to improve the performance on that street So streets that are at a good rating, there's some micro sealing or slurry coating that you can do that will extend the life of that street. If it's gone past good, it is in a fair condition, then that means there's probably some cracks that have started to show up. You've probably driven a street where you've got pavement and you can very clearly see cracks moving down that street. The danger of those cracks is that water that hits the surface of the street, water should hit the street, run off, and move away. But water will go into those cracks, and if the crack is only at the surface or into the road material, the water will get down there and it'll begin to degrade the integrity of that road material. If it gets in there and freezes, then it will fracture that road material. And then over time, water will get through the crack and down into the base. If water gets into the base, then it will destabilize the base, and that makes more surface area of the street begin to fail. If it gets through the base to the subgrade, then you've got some major problems to the entire structure of that road. So when cracks begin to appear, you want to do what's called a crack seal. There's some asphalt and tar treatments that you can come in and you can begin to lay a line, and it's like putting caulk. Wherever that crack is, you want to put a surface treatment to close that crack to prevent water from getting down into that surface. There's some specific equipment and tools that are used to do a crack seal. It's very hard to maintain that equipment, and it's not used all year long. So typically, if you have a road that needs crack seal, you'll hire a contractor. It's specialized equipment, it's specialized knowledge on how to use it, and if the city were to buy the equipment for crack seal, you're going to use it 1 or 2 months out of the year, and then it's going to not be used, and that you don't want to own equipment that you're not using on a regular basis. So crack seal is usually done with some kind of a contractor. After crack seal and the micro surfacing, if it's in poor or good, not good, but fair to poor condition, you can put in what's called a chip seal. That is, you come in with a piece of equipment and you spray a fine layer of oil onto that street, and then you come behind it with another piece of equipment and you lay a level of gravel, small little rocks that get laid on top of that tar. So you've got the surface of the road, you spray a new layer of asphalt and oil, and then you put a new level of gravel on top of that. You roll it, pack it down, and then you've created a new surface. You didn't touch the road material, you didn't touch the base or the subgrade, but you just put a new surface on top of what was existing there. Sometimes if the street has reached a poor condition, crack seal's not going to do any good. A chip seal or a micro surfacing is not going to do any good. You've actually got to come in with a special machine and you've got to mill. You've got to chew up and remove the top portion. So if your road material is 4 to 5 inches thick, you'll come in and you'll cut 3 inches off the top. So that mill machine will grind up and remove the top 3 inches of that road surface, and then you'll come back and you'll put a new 3 inches of material. So it was 5 inches, you cut 3 off, then you come put a new 3 inches on top. So that's a mill and overlay. You've got a special piece of equipment that will come in and scrape off or chew up the top, and then you'll follow it with laying new asphalt to create a new road material. And finally, you have what's called full depth repair. And so with full depth repair, similar to a mill and overlay, a mill, if you've got 5 inches of street and you're going to mill off the 3 inches, a full depth, you're going to take all 5. And so you'll bring in a special grinder machine and you'll chew up all 5 inches of that asphalt surface and you'll remove it so that what's left is the base. Then you'll put a new road on top of that base material. Remember, reconstruction, you dig all the way down to the subgrade. You put a new subgrade, you put a new base, you put a new road, and you put a new surface. For these types of maintenance, you're treating the surface, you may be removing part of the surface, or you're removing the entire road, but you're leaving the base and the subgrade alone. Obviously, each of these types of treatment costs more. The deeper you go in that maintenance, the more the cost is. Crack seal, micro surfacing, chip sealing, mill and overlay, or full depth repair. Those are the different types of maintenance activities that can be done on streets. You've heard me say with our PCI evaluation, the vast majority of our streets are in poor to failed condition. Failed streets need reconstruction. Poor streets, you can get away with maybe a mill and overlay or potentially a full depth repair. And so the city recently purchased a new piece of equipment called an asphalt zipper. That's just the brand name, but it is a mill and grinding machine. And so we now have the equipment because most of our roads are in poor condition. We can grind up that roadway surface, either 2, 3, or all 5 inches of that roadway, remove that surface, and then hire a contractor to come in and put a new surface level in. This allows us to do more meaningful maintenance activities at a lower cost. If we hire a contractor to come do the full depth repair, then they grind, they remove, and then they lay the new surface. If we are able to grind and remove that, that becomes recycled material that we can use in other areas. And so we perform the labor of grinding and removing that existing surface that's in poor condition. We retain that material that's been recycled, and then we can use it for areas around town that need additional surface treatment. And so we are looking to begin doing our own full depth repair and some mill and overlay with the new equipment that we've just acquired. Staff is currently training on how to use that. And so you'll begin to see over the coming months and into this next year, very visible projects in which we are doing full depth repair or mill and overlay projects using our own staff and our own equipment, supplemented by contractors. And so as we move forward, again, the goal is to prioritize those streets that are in poor PCI condition, that we have the tools, the staff, and the equipment to do meaningful maintenance work and replace just the road or the road surface. And so those projects will be coming up. Thank you again for giving us some time. We know streets is a priority. We get feedback from the community all the time that we need to do work on our streets. We agree. Streets is our responsibility. We have not always carried that responsibility well, but we're acquiring equipment. We're giving training for new skills and new abilities to our staff so that we can start doing effective street maintenance to improve the surface and extend the life of our streets. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for commitment to our community. Thank you for working with us to make Commerce a great place to live. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to Commerce Connect. Together, we're building a community that's not only strong today, but ready for the future. Stay connected, stay informed, and as always, let's work together to build a better commerce.